All right. How y'all feeling? Feel like some power has been shifted up in here? Word, word, word. All right, so we're going to get started with some incredible keynotes. We have Elise Keaton, Rev Yearwood, and our man's Malik Yusuf, who came back from New York to be here again. 3 states in one day. All right, Nobile.
Hello, I'm Nubile, and I'm going to introduce one of our keynotes, Elise Keaton. She is an amazing environmental activist. A bunch of us met her at Mountain Justice Spring Break last year, and she sort of just like laid down like the one-on-one on fracking and mountaintop removal. We went to see Cayford Mountain, which I don't know about the other people that went to Mountain Justice, but for me that just kind of like sparked something and changed something in me, like seeing mountaintop removal, like devastation like that. I think really drove like our passions for the environment to another level. Elise grew up in southern West Virginia. She attended Virginia Tech and earned a degree in political science. Through her studies, she met Larry Gibson, and then there she began working with Larry and Stanley Ear Foundation, and then through that she did service learning projects at the center at Virginia Tech. She's coordinated numerous trips for students to go see Cayford Mountain. And then she went to University of Houston, where she got her law degree and then continued to educate her peers and colleagues about devastating effects of mountaintop removal. She then returned back to West Virginia in 2011 and began as the fundraising director for Director of Keeper of the Mountains. And now she works for Greenbrier Watershed Association as the full-time new pipeline coordinator. And she's currently working on the Mountain Valley Pipeline and the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. So please give a shout out to the wonderful Elise Keaton.
Thank you all so much. Happy Valentine's Day. You are my Valentines, if in the moment, and I am so grateful for each and every one of you and for who you are and what you're doing here this weekend and what you're going to go out and do after this. I extended the invitation to the group earlier, and just so I don't forget, if you have any interest in seeing mountaintop removal firsthand, and what that really means is looking down on a mountain that used to be there and seeing the process of a mountain being blasted apart to get the coal, contact me. I'll take you there. If 1 or 2 of you want to come in a car, that's great. If 20 want to get together and come, that's great. We'll go up on the mountain and we'll talk about it. So use me as a resource to learn more about mountaintop removal. And I'll talk a little bit about pipeline work in a minute. Basically what I wanted to share with you all tonight, well, it's a funny story. I've been writing this talk in my head for weeks, and I had no idea what I was going to say tonight until I got here and sat in on a few of the breakout sessions and realized that we're all part of this same big narrative. And so I think it's important, and one of the points I want to raise is the power that we're trying to shift, you have to build it first. You have to build your power and then shift it, and shift the power that's already built. And one of the ways you do that is by being in relationship with each other and with your neighbors and with your community. It's really important. And one of the ways you build that relationship is you listen to each other's stories and you learn about self-interest. And I want to share with you parts of my story today because I want you to understand how we ended up in this room here together, and how sometimes the route you take isn't always the one you expect or the one you choose necessarily. Sometimes it chooses you, and that's a good thing. But if your heart is open and your mind is centered, you'll find yourself exactly where you should be with the right people doing exactly what you should be doing. So pay attention, listen to what's inside of you, and follow your heart, and the doors will open. I get asked all the time, I want to do what you do. How do I do it? Well, number one, you take a vow of poverty. Be sure that you're not too attached to money or material things, because you will not have those things. But that's okay, because what you have is this. You have a community of love and support and action, and that's really important. So I grew up in southern West Virginia, paradise, New River Gorge National Park, right? Sandstone Falls, New River, Bluestone Park, Pipestem. West Virginia was mountains and rivers and butterflies and unicorns and rainbows, and it was beautiful. Then I went to Virginia Tech, and I was there for a whole year, and it's still in the blind. And then my sophomore year, I took a course called Appalachian Communities. And I heard the words mountaintop removal for the very first time as a 19-year-old student at Virginia Tech. And every hair on my body stood up. I had this visceral reaction like, mountaintop removal? Well, that sounds ridiculous. And I went up to the professor and he told me, you need to meet Larry Gibson and go to Cayford Mountain. So I went right back to the county where I lived in West Virginia, and found out that on the other side of the county they were blowing apart the mountains to get the coal. I was shocked. I was devastated. I was betrayed. I was pissed. I was angry. And there was Larry Gibson, about this tall, powerful, one of the most powerful men. Has anybody in here ever met Larry Gibson or seen videos? See a few hands? Good. Do yourself a favor and look him up online and watch him talk a little bit, because he will inspire you as well. So I stood with Larry on Cayford Mountain and decided mountaintop removal was an evil that needed to be stopped in the world. And I worked for 2 years on every project I could think of, and I took a lot of people up there, and after 2 years I realized I was not going to stop mountaintop removal. And I got very frustrated and angry about that, and I started thinking about, well, what can I do to really stop it? Like chaining myself to equipment and sitting in trees and blowing stuff up. That's where my mind started going, was how can I really stop mountaintop removal? And thankfully I had a good group of people around me that said, you know, you seem like a smart girl. You've got some resources, you've got some privilege. Why don't you use what you have to help in this fight? So I looked around and I thought, well, what is it that I need to get here? What do I need to bring back? I need to know why it's legal for them to extract coal in this fashion. So I went to law school to figure out why this was legal. And the whole point of going there was to read SMCRA, the Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act. And once I read SMCRA, I realized we were screwed. We were in a lot of trouble because it was legal. Not only was it legal in the frame of an environmental protection statute. That statute was intended to protect the environment, but what it did is it legislated that method of mining. Okay, so that means the issue is with the policy. I wasn't going to be able to stop it unless I looked at the policy. So I graduated from law school in 2005, the same summer that Katrina happened. And I had the opportunity to go and work in New Orleans for 6 months after Katrina. Very eye-opening. Would love to talk about that another time. There I met some people who lived in Colorado, and I went to Colorado. I wasn't ready to come back to West Virginia yet because I just learned that we were screwed. And so I needed to go out and figure out how to come back with some skills, right? I needed to get something and figure this out. So I went to Colorado and I got my license to practice law there, and I became a lobbyist. Boo, hiss, lobbyist, dirty word, lobbyist. Well, I was one of those good lobbyists, right? I lobbied for nonprofits and I lobbied for school districts, and I lobbied to learn how that system worked. Because when I was a policy analyst, I kept hearing people say, well, the machine is broken, the system's broken, it doesn't work. Well, my dad was a mechanic, and I learned that if a machine's broken, you have to break it down and get inside of it and understand how it works before you can fix it or modify it, right? So I went into the machine and started breaking it apart and breaking it down and helping people like you and other college students and high school students figure out ways they could enter that machine and advocate for themselves so that they didn't need lobbyists. It's a lofty dream. It worked a little bit. I left Colorado in 2011, and a lot of great things happened in Colorado after I left there, and I'd like to think that some of the work I did there had an impact on that. When I got back to West Virginia, I came back to West Virginia. Is anybody here from West Virginia? Sort of. We'll take it. We'll take it. You're sort of from West Virginia. That's great. I'm surprised that there aren't more folks here from West Virginia. If you're from West Virginia, how about Virginia? Lots of you are from Virginia. Virginia is an incredibly beautiful state, and if you ever leave it, you may feel that pull. It was described like West Virginia is like a fish hook in your heart. Just kind of, you feel that tug every now and then. I missed my family. I missed oxygen in the air. Not a lot of oxygen in the air in Colorado, so I came back to West Virginia and got back in touch with Larry, and he said, well, where have you been? You've been gone for 13 years. Where have you been? We need you here. Come back and work on mountaintop removal with us. Look at what we're doing. And in the time I'd been gone, they'd built a really awesome movement. They'd engaged a lot more folks. They had a lot of programs going that were really important, so I was excited to get back into the work. I applied for the job, sent my application in on a Wednesday, and Larry Gibson passed away the following Sunday. And so I felt a tremendous loss that I didn't get to stand with him as an adult and show him all the things I'd learned and to learn all the things that he had learned. But we kept on going, Keeper of the Mountains. We kept it intact, and for 2 years, we continued doing the tours on Kayford and going out and giving the talks and reaching out to folks. We have about 20 tours scheduled this spring. So Keepers is still going and doing the good things and educating people about mountaintop removal. On January 9th of last year, I was an American Water customer. I'd moved to Charleston to work on mountaintop removal, and I drank my tap water because I'm poor and I drink my tap water. I can't afford bottled water. And I came home from work on January the 9th. It was a very cold winter. We were all trying to stay hydrated. I poured a big glass of tap water and drank it down and set it down, and instantly got a text message from my landlord that said, "There's been a chemical leak, don't drink the water." Oh yeah, wow. Now I knew I lived in the Chemical Valley. That's what they call the Kanawha Valley because they produce a lot of chemicals there. But I just assumed people were keeping an eye on keeping the water safe. I was wrong, turns out. So I stuck it out in Charleston for a couple months, and I had this shelter. It's a building with no electricity and no running water on an acre of land down in the southern part of the state that belonged to my family. And I was carrying water into a $700 a month apartment to bathe with and cook with and to clean with. And I thought, well, why am I paying rent to be on utilities if I have this free place to live down at the southern part of the state where I know the water's good and the air's good? I'm just going to move off grid. I'm just going to move off grid. I'm going to go down there, forget the Chemical Valley, forget the water. I'll still do mountaintop removal. I need to get out of Charleston. Moving off grid. Tough. Hardest thing I've ever done. That's another talk. We'll talk more about that if folks want to, but there are lots of issues with that. Convenience. Convenience is what I miss most about living off grid. It's harder to do everything. It takes longer. But I'm more in sync with the cycles of the universe and the planet and seasons and things like that. So it really is an adjustment. It's a paradigm adjustment. You learn about how much electricity you really need, because when you have a solar bank and the sun doesn't shine for 6 days, you don't have electricity. So these are all things that I'm learning in this process. I also have deep internal issues about why it's okay for me to have batteries with materials that were extracted in other countries so that they don't extract coal in my state. That's a major issue for me, and I'm having trouble reconciling that, and I don't know what those answers are. And so these are constant things that go on in my head anyway. So I got away from the water. I moved back down to the southern part of the state. I'm like, okay, I'm back down here. Everything is cool. And then all of a sudden I hear whispers of pipelines. There's a pipeline. There's going to be a pipeline. There's this big pipeline. It's a big pipeline for frack gas. Well, there's 2 pipelines. Well, there's 3 pipelines. Well, they're proposing 4 pipelines. What? So we start looking around, and all of a sudden this job pops up to start organizing on these pipelines. I honestly didn't know what it was. I didn't know what they were. I saw the job and was like, okay, I want to do that. Tell me what to do. So they hired me, and then I realized they really want to just frack the heck out of Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania and export it. That's really what the pipelines are about. The pipelines are about extracting natural gas and selling it in other markets. Baseline. This is important. These pipelines represent so much more than a piece of metal in our Mother Earth. They represent so much more than a gouge across a national forest, or 2 national forests, or 3 national forests in this case. These pipelines represent a paradigm for us as humans, as Americans, as people on this planet, as to what our values are. The pipelines that they are proposing cross some of the last pristine environment, some of the last pristine biodiverse areas of our planet. Guaranteed clean water flows out of the Greenbrier River. It is one of the few, if not the last, truly uncorrupted river on the eastern seaboard. And the Atlantic Coast Pipeline would cross its headwaters, and the Mountain Valley Pipeline would cross it in Pence Springs. It would drill under it. So I often ask now, well, what is the value of a gallon of guaranteed clean water? Not the cost, not what you pay for it in the store, but what is the value of that? Why is that not part of our economic discussion when we talk about economics of natural gas and fossil fuel development? Why are we going to let industry compromise some of the few natural places we have left on our planet? Why should we? This is really bigger. This is about where their corporate rights to extract and produce and profit bump up against our individual rights as communities to say, no, no. We don't want to lose access to clean water. We don't want to lose our watersheds and our rivers and our small streams. They don't care. They want to get a pipeline in the ground as quickly as they can, just like mountaintop removal. They want to get that coal out of the ground and to market as quickly as they can. So folks like you gather at events like this, and you listen to people like me. And people like me are just folks like you who have done this for a little while longer and have learned a few things. I learned a few things here today, but I connected some dots here today on two key things that I want to leave you with. In my opinion, one of the best things you can do, and one of the things that is immediately within your ability to do, is identify your values and live your life in a way that upholds those values. If you value clean air and clean water, take steps in your life every day to uphold those values. If you value community connections, make community connections a part of your everyday life. Live your life in a way that upholds those values. I value clean air and clean water. I've tried to reduce my carbon consumption. I've tried to reduce my electricity consumption. I've tried to adjust my life in a way that reflects my values. It's hard. It's not easy, and that's why there is huge inertia in doing it, is because if it were easy, we would have already done it. But we're so geared for convenience that we're not really ready to give that up yet. And the second thing that I really want you all to think about is the great movements that have happened before this movement that have been successful have been based on building power one-on-one and one-to-one relationships, and sitting down and talking and hearing people's stories, listening more than you talk, circling back with them, finding out what their self-interest is. No matter where you come from, politically, economically, at the end of the day, we are all really, truly human beings who have a very similar set of base needs. And you'll be amazed the gems that you find within your community when you start building those relationships. And what will happen is you'll find that we have a lot more in common than we don't. And all of this, you saw some media clips up here as part of this documentary they were showing. All of that is to keep you distracted and to keep you from talking to your neighbors. Somebody told me the other day they think the biggest downfall to civilization was air conditioning. Because on hot summer evenings, you used to sit out on your porch and fan yourself and talk to your neighbors, and now we sit in front of our air conditioners, right? Power is in the relationship. You have to build relationships with one another here, out in your community, and you have to maintain those relationships. That's how you build your power. If you do those two things, you'll see success, you'll see building, you'll see empowerment. One last thought before I leave. When I jumped into the organizing on the pipelines, they were on my turf. Like mountaintop removal, I didn't grow up in the coal fields. I always felt like one step removed, like I wasn't a truly impacted citizen because nobody was blowing up the mountain behind my house to get the coal. I felt differently after I drank MCHM in my tap water in Charleston. I did feel like I was an impacted citizen. And Larry Gibson used to say, I am not collateral damage. I am somebody. I feel that way now. You can't use your sink. My sink is your toilet, chemical industry. No. I am not collateral damage. I am worth more than that. I will stand up and fight for that. Larry Gibson had to deal with that loss, right? He had to deal with that. The communities that are not impacted yet by these pipelines, and I always say there's not a pipeline in the ground yet, and until there's a pipeline in the ground, there's still a chance there won't be a pipeline in the ground. So until it's there, there's a chance it won't happen. So don't ever think that it's a foregone conclusion because somebody tells you that. If you sat in the neoliberalism, capitalism breakout, we maybe shouldn't take that that's the way it is, right? The world as we want it, the world as it should be, the world as we see it. Imagine something different. In Monroe County, West Virginia, I never thought much about Monroe. We were big football rivals, James Monroe High School in Summers County. We whooped them regularly. So I didn't think much about Monroe County. I thought, well, they're backwards and blah, blah, blah. It's typical Summers County. We're better than they are. 125 people showed up at a county commissioners meeting on a Thursday afternoon in Monroe County and made EQT representatives cry, made their lips quiver, made their eyes tear up, because they showed up in force as a community, 125 people. And when the county commissioners recognized that the power shift had happened in the room, one of the commissioners stood up and said, okay, we're going to adjourn this meeting 1 hour in. 125 people hit their feet in protest and said, no, you're not going to adjourn this meeting. We want answers. They came here to answer us, blah, 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 blah. I knew I was in the right place with the right people doing the right thing. I've never been more proud of my people or my community than when I saw that. And I knew that I would do anything I could to support them in it. So that's what I am for you now and for them now, as a resource. When it comes to pipelines, you have my contact information. If you don't, talk to the organizers here. I am giving information as fast as I can get it to everybody I can to help stay ahead of this thing. It's different than mountaintop removal. We're not looking at a mountain that's already gone and saying we have to stop this. We're looking at clean, pristine forests that haven't been corrupted yet and saying we have to protect them. It's a different conversation. I need your help. You need my help. I need your help. We all need each other. Live your life in a way that upholds your values and build relationships every single day. And call me and come to Cayford and come visit me. And when they don't put the pipeline in, we're going to have a big celebration. All right? Thank you.
Yeah, let's give it up one more time for Elise Keaton. All right, so next up we have Reverend Yearwood. Rev Yearwood is one of the most influential people in hip-hop political life. He's the CEO and president of the Hip Hop Caucus, organization that's trying to bring our political issues, the issues that are affecting our communities and the youth of our nation, into hip-hop culture and art, and into the mainstream consciousness. He has a long list of accolades, but every time I've heard this man speak, he reminds us that the accolades aren't what matter. It's the progress that he brings to the movement. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about the progress that he's brought specifically to our movement. Rev Yearwood, after he spoke last year at Virginia Power Shift, the message and the narrative that he displayed has become the common language of this Virginia statewide network. Personally, every time I've heard him speak, I've come back to my campus with a renewed sense of energy. Genuinely, it fueled me. Yeah, I can't say enough about Rev Yearwood, but the shockwaves from his words and his work has really spread far and wide, especially in our youth movement, but really beyond that. So let's give a round of applause for Rev Yearwood.
Thank you, brother. Oh man, 1, 2, 1, 2. Mic check. First of all, where's Kendall? Kendall? Wave, Kendall, wave. So she's self-organized earlier. She told me she wanted to make sure that we all got the form. What form we got there? Do your mic check, occupy voice real quick.
Hi everyone, my name is Kendall and I'm a Sierra Club organizer. I'm based in Richmond, Virginia, and we are collecting petitions that will go to Governor McAuliffe, and we're trying to tell him to support a clean power plan to our state. So please, before you leave this weekend, I hope that you sign a petition. I'm sending it around now.
There it is. No, I like the snap, you know what I mean? I'm hip hop. So we're gonna have a lot of fun. So it's very important, thank you for that. I'm gonna give like it's gonna be like, this is how we're gonna go. I'm gonna give a speech. It's gonna be kind of intense to how we expand our movement. And then we'll go into the good feel. And then after that, we go from there, wherever we go. But it's important, so I wanna make sure and say that because 1, 2, 1, 2. So this mic is going out. Am I going in out here? Yes. I am, right? Yeah. That's a hip hop guy right there. He said, yes, the mic is going in and out. 1, 2. There you go. There you go. So first things first, just so you know with my credentials, because I'm going to have some fun first, because, you know, you'd be like, look at the reverend guy with the hat on his head. So, you know, I got all these great credentials. I got doctorate, master's, bachelor's, all those good stuff. But so you know, none of that matters to me, because all that matters to me is saving our planet. Are y'all on that plane to save our planet? All right. So we in the right spot. So everybody stand to your feet real quick. Loosen the limbs. Loosen the limbs. What's going on in the balcony way up back there? There you go in the red. That's what's up. That's what's up. Oh, man, loosen your limbs. Loosen your limbs. So now, I got with me right now the famous, extraordinary producer for Kanye West, 5-time Grammy, 15-time nominated, Malik Youssef, y'all. Give it up. You know what I'm saying? He gonna come out here and he gonna kick it. But Malik is from Chi-Town, Chicago. So I was at a power shift and I wanna have some fun. So I think we're gonna do what I did at another power shift, and we're gonna have fun off that power shift at this power shift. Y'all cool with that? All right. So it's a young guy named from Chicago, named by the name of Elder Chief Keef. And he got a song called I Don't Like. Y'all know that song, right? Y'all know that it's supposed to get real deep in power shift right now. It's about to get real heavy. So I'm gonna play what we did at that power shift, but you and me, we're gonna do the I don't like part, right? Now the part I'm gonna say up here, don't say the curse words, unless you want to. Well, you can say, well, we here at this power shift, we can say what you would, at the Virginia power shift, you can do what you want to do. So let's go ahead, let's get it kicking here. Yeah, here we go. Hold on. This got to be, where's my sound guy at? Sound guy. Cartland, we need some volume here, brother. We need some volume. Yeah, we can't do Chief Keef. Oh, I like that. I like that already, Cartland. You gotta lock them first. So lock them. So we gotta find your neighbor, lock him up. Lock him up. Let's do a little practice. I'm gonna see how much rhythm y'all got, Virginia. So we gotta. Oh, y'all ready? Y'all Virginia ready to go. Y'all look like ready to go. Hey, Carla, give us some volume, Carla. Let's go, come on. Here we go. I don't like, come on. I don't like. Yes. Keystone Pipelines. Come on. Keystone Pipelines. Fossil fuels. Fracking all around. Mountaintop removal. All gassy coal. Whew, that was fun. But now, since you're all on your feet, I got you on your feet, and we end this movement together, turn to your neighbor and give him a hug. Oh, that's right. Turn to the other neighbor, give him a hug. Give him a hug. Oh, okay. It's too much hugging going on. It's too much hugging going on now. It's too much. I said just a little bit of hugging. A little bit of hugging. Y'all doing some extra hugging. I know the goal was to grow the movement, but we gonna do this through organizing. Oh man. So first and foremost, while we all up in the air, let me just say this. Y'all feel all right? Y'all feel all right? So I'm gonna have some fun while I got y'all up. And before I get into this real deep thing, I'm going with the Spirit, and the Spirit is telling me right now that it's time for my man Malik Youssef to come up here and grab the mic and give us a little something. Good music.
Man, this is what you were saying, man. Hey, how y'all doing, man? Thank y'all. Thank y'all for being here. Thank y'all for being part of the movement. Thank y'all for, for believing that you have the power inside you to make the changes that are needed for our planet to continue. Well, for us to continue on our planet. I'm just very moved. I'm always moved when there's one person. I like sometimes when I meet a person, like, somebody that thinks like us or thinks like the people that never get a voice. And to have a whole room full of y'all is very, very cathartic for me, being in the industry where it's hard for people to see past, the next album or the next film that they get to do. I have a poem that I did for the Home album. How many of y'all got the Home album? Not many? Not enough. Y'all playing. Y'all motherfucking playing, Joe. Straight up. We made this album for the movement to encourage the people. I mean, we make all kind of songs, you know what I'm saying? We make albums all the time. Working on Kanye album right now. Working on Rihanna album right now. Puffy album right now. Big Sean album finna drop. You know what I'm saying? We do that all the time, but because y'all be really getting it in, really grinding for real, we wanted to give y'all a little something, a token of our appreciation for the work y'all do. And I'm a little bit surprised that the people that we made the album for are not involved in the product. And it's a tad disturbing for two reasons. For one, that you didn't have knowledge of it. And for two, once you understood that it existed, you didn't run and get it. Because a lot of times we say, we need music that's conscious. We don't need this. We don't like Chief Keef because he's a gangman from Southside Chicago. Well, I'm a gangman from Southside Chicago. I started gangbanging when I was 12. And whatever Chief Keef has done, he's been a rapper most of his life. I never was a rapper. So I did full-on gangbanging every day. And I'm telling you right now, music, the frequencies, the sound, the sonics changed who I was. Well, made me uncovered who I wanted to be. But growing up on the South Side and being in the opposite gang territory wasn't no easy task. So I had to be tougher than every other opposing gang member and the toughest dude that I knew. I had to be the toughest dude I knew. And every time I showed up, I had to make sure that I double imposed my will on everybody. Anybody that wasn't with my program, they had to catch it from me. So me being able to be a poet, I went through a lot to be a poet. I left, millions of dollars on the street to be a poet. My own gang members asked me, what happened? Why did I turn gay? And when you 19, 20 years old, and the dudes you look up to are telling you that there's something wrong with you because you like poetry once people found out, because it was like closeted, you know. But nevertheless, I knew who I wanted to be in life and what I wanted to do in life. So when we say, you know, this Home album was created for people that think like this, that believe like this is real. We want to give this to you. We want you to have this in your arsenal. We want you to be able to use this as a tool, as a weapon, as a shield, as a garment, as a comforter, to let you know you're on the right path, and there's people that are willing to jump in with you that make millions of dollars. Some make millions of dollars a day from doing something that has nothing to do with saving the planet. So I want to encourage everybody to go to iTunes. If you have the means, if you have, how much is the album? $9.99? The album is $4.99. Now that I didn't know. $4.99. Oh, because the deal we did with Apple. We did a deal with Apple, a special deal with Apple, to bring it to you at the lowest possible rate, so that the movement can still get paid and the artists can get paid a little bit for their art. I'm gonna say this, and then I'm gonna let Rev come back. I'm gonna let you finish. I'm gonna just. When you purchase art, like this shirt, come here. This is art. Now you can't steal this art from him unless you took it off his back. And you wouldn't want to. You wouldn't want to steal. This is beautiful, right? You know there's some thought went into this, some struggle, some mistakes went into this. You wouldn't want to steal this. You would say, okay, he did a lot to get to this place. This shirt went through a lot of iterations to get here. But so you can steal my art without me knowing. You don't gotta accost me. You don't have to interact with me in any way. You can steal my art, or you can ignore my art. But my art, like any artist, is pain and struggle and doubt and confusion and tears and hours away from loved ones and turning off loved ones while you're still in the room with them. That's any artist. That's any art that's created, that's ever been created, has not been created with great ease. When I present things to the world, I'm always very nervous. I'm always like, okay, I hope. And I just tell Rev, if I could go back on Trouble in the Water, I would change the drum pattern to fit Common's verse, to fit his verses. I hate that I missed that. But to make this album, man, I almost killed myself. In real life. I had a car accident, not one nose. Oh man, boom, one nose. I had one nose. Boom! And when I was hitting the back of the truck, I said, damn, I killed myself. And I said, but nah. And when I came to, the police officer that was a motorcycle police officer was calling because the airbag didn't deploy, so it's a failure to deploy, which almost always means great harm or death. And I thought my ankle was broke, but it wasn't. I thought I busted my head on the windshield because the windshield was cracked, but it wasn't. I thought I broke my neck because the pain was so, and it was lasted for months too. And so another motorcycle police showed up, and a fire truck, LA County fire truck, and 2 paramedics showed up. And it was so loud that kids in the neighborhood brought their cell phones out to see the carnage. And they were filming. And when I started to move and to reambulate, they were disappointed. And this officer for 17 years, when the squad car came, he said, he was mad at me. He said, everything that possibly need to go right went right for you to save your life. Because when I hit the truck in front of me, I broke the axle. I turned the car just enough. My hand still isn't healed from that, and that was in July. I broke the axle and made her car move. When I broke the axle, the car moved just enough. But if I was going any faster or had missed it by any amount, even inches, it would have sheared the side of the car off, would have cut my leg open and exposed my femoral artery, and I would have bled out right there. And if I would have hit it head on, it would have been like hitting a brick wall. And without the deployment of the airbag, it would have compressed my body. So the female officer, she was a young Irish lady, she said she's never seen somebody survive an accident like this, let alone walk away, because I didn't go to the hospital. I refused care because I had to work on this album. Because I felt like people in this movement need to know that they're appreciated by people that in the industry where you see us on TV and you see us at fashion shows and all this, that we see this. We need you to keep pushing the envelope so that we can so that our art can sit there properly, so that it's not disjointed, so that our friends aren't like, why'd you make that song? They don't care. And I know that you care because you're here today. But the album is part of that struggle. It's part of that doubt, that confusion, that lack of sleep, that forgetting to eat. So if you are part of this movement, understand that the People's Climate music is part of this movement as well. And to embrace that piece of art, just like you hugged each other a little while ago, embrace that art, that offering. Yes, it has a price tag on it because the price of freedom is not cheap. And we gave, what Common charges $500,000 for a song, Neo charges $500,000 for a song. That song is given to you for $4.99. Those sonics that I stayed up days at a time to have a frequency that you could make you feel good and welcomed and appreciated. So I just want you to know that and to tell your friends about it and to talk to your associations like Sierra Club. They should have sent out 1 billion pieces of information about this project because the bosses were there at the mansion where we were doing it at, having a good time. And all the organizations that you are a part of, please question them on why this information was not disseminated properly. Okay, so that's it. Y'all can sit down. Thank you very much.
So they said, what about the poem?
Oh, the poem. I forgot.
Oh, you want to hold that?
Yeah, I'll hold it.
He gonna do the poem. He won't get away. He gonna do 2 poems. There it is, and it was second in the balcony. So I want to talk about what Malik was talking about, our movement, because I think the thing here is that for me, the goal for us is to be successful. Our goal is not to, as they say, play movement, but to be a movement. And so one of the things what Malik was saying was talking about this album that was, and thank you, TC, good for TC Muhammad from Hip Hop Caucus. You see? He's giving you right now, and that's important because one of the things that I have learned in our movement is 2 things. First thing in regards to most of you being young people. Our movement has a tendency to want to create a kiddie table for the movement. Anybody here know what a kiddie table is? Thanksgiving. Or whatever your holiday may be. And you've gone off to JMU or Mary Washington or Virginia Tech or Roanoke, wherever you are, you've gone there and then, you know, you've been hanging out, drinking a few beers here and there and doing your thing. And you go home and you know you're grown up now and either got facial hair or, you know, drove back home. They put you at the little table with the little kids who are like 7, 8. And then the little kid like staring at you and telling you all about like, you know, things that don't interest you at all. Like, did you know that there's a new Avengers movie coming outside in this summer? And you're like, oh, I do. I need to get out of here. The first thing is that our movement treats you that way. When you have to be the leaders of this movement, because we're dealing with a movement 15 years into the 21st century, which means that folks who were organizing at the first Earth Day 45 years ago, which is the same age as some of y'all's mamas and daddies, are still trying to dictate a movement even based in the 70s and 80s. What worked then? What didn't work then? And even bringing some of those old issues and problems. You know, I don't like so-and-so because, you know, when back in 1982, they didn't give me a grant. Or back in, you know, 1998, some of y'all like, I wasn't even born back in 1982. It's not my beef. But they bring all that forward at a time when you have to lead. And they're not allowing you, because the only thing that you can do is lead other young people. But you should tell them, and I will tell them for you, we will tell them together that we have to lead this movement. Because in 1970, there was no Facebook. There was no Instagram. There was no Twitter. There was no social media. There was no, I don't even think CNN was around. I'm not too sure there was around. I'm not too sure. I don't think so. But when no cable, I think. Well, on the internet, wasn't with the internet? They would like no email, nothing. They would just phones. Ring, ring, ring. Hello? So we need you to lead this movement. Also, what they didn't have, what we have now is that our movement needs to come together because we come together as black and white and brown and yellow and male and female and straight and gay and theist and atheist. We come together as humanity for our movement. We got to break the silos down in our movement. And somehow that old baggage gets carried over. And we are not fighting the enemy of our day. First thing. Second thing is that when we have this movement, as Malik said, we have to make what we need to make hot, and they will follow. So one of the most bad things that we could do, for instance, is take this music and make it the #1 seller. #1 thing, so everybody's looking for it around the globe. And we can do that. We can do that through social media and other aspects. So those are the two things that we have to do. Before I get to that, let me actually go back a little bit, because one of my things is history. I do think you need to learn from history. So we're sitting here, and I believe that in this movement, my job here today on this Valentine's Day is to make you so not forget this day. That when you are by yourself in your apartment or your dorm room, and you're ready to, man, I can't do this no more, you will think about this moment, and you will continue to fight the good fight. That's really all I'm here to do, is to get you encouraged. Because I can sit here and talk about, I can impress you with all my knowledge about climate change and carbons and what is pollution and what's not pollution and how we should work together to solve that. but this is an in-house kind of meeting. So I'm gonna begin this in-house meeting like this, going back to the ground that you are now sitting on, if I may. So I can just go back in time, let's say literally, what is this? This is 2015. So let's go back 200 years. That would be what, 18 what? So the Virginia Tech students are that quick. Now, now Mary Washington and UVA, y'all should have been like this. So we didn't even ask no quiz here. We was Saturday night, Rev. 1815. 1815. Fredericksburg, Virginia. I wasn't standing here like this talking to you. Let me say this about the African American tradition too, why Virginia is important. Because this is the first state that Africans put their feet in this country in 1619 in Jamestown. And so this land called Virginia is significant to people of color just for that reason alone. Because when we first came to the shores of this country in bondage and as enslaved people, the first part of America that we saw was Virginia. It wasn't West Virginia, it wasn't Wyoming, it wasn't California, it wasn't Florida. The first part of this land we saw was Virginia. And we came here as slaves. And so to fast forward through that story, people came and they saw the moral wrong in that. But despite the moral wrong in that, they could not solve that in 1620. It wasn't solved, matter of fact, in 1621. Even though there was good folks, white folks, and definitely black folks who said this should end, it kept going on. As a matter of fact, it went all the way for another 100 years to 1720. 100 years of slavery. And then on top of that, right here, 1 mile, I believe is it 1000 Charles Street, if I'm not mistaken. There's still a slave block. If you're here in Mary Washington, you should definitely see. If you're visiting, you should definitely just hang around and go there and walk there. You should see the slave block on 1000 Charles Street. That's still there, and then but this high, and not that impressive in the middle of the street, where they would put people on that slave block. And that continued. Matter of fact, as the namesake of this institution, Mary Washington, the mother of George Washington, was one of the biggest slave owners in the land. Had so many slaves, the record showed that when her will, she had too many slaves to give to the people who were in the will. Folk were just left out. They said, where are we going to put this one? You're giving 10 to this one and 10 to that one. Mary Washington. And then the Civil War breaks out, and this place is very known for the Battle of Fredericksburg. It's actually where the Confederate won. It's very important if you're a historian and you recognize history, because that war happened in December of 1862. And when that war breaks out and the North is coming down with hundreds of thousands of men, and they don't have as many on the South side. I think they had 70 or 74,000. And they meet over the battlefield, not too far, you probably can see it out the window. And when they meet on the battlefield, there's an old story that the blacks who were then a part of the Union Army were trying to tell the Union at that time that the Confederate they were in the ground, but they were so high and mighty, they didn't listen to the black folk. They didn't listen to the black folk who was around here in Fredericksburg. So the story is that it was a critical war for Abraham Lincoln. He was just going through his election. Maybe elections just keep coming up. But he was going through an election process, going through that. And he was, if you look at the dates, 1862 and 1863, he was preparing. He wanted to put forth the Emancipation Proclamation in January of 1863. And so this war is critical to win this war. And so they come down to the war and they get routed. The North suffers the worst defeat in the Civil War, right here where you're sitting. And the casualties, matter of fact, at that time, the Richmond paper went off and they was jubilant because they had felt that was a turning point. Well, it wasn't the turning point. And as humanity goes, and we move forward now to 2015, we sit here on this old battleground, black and white, male and female. We sit here after that. We sit here not too far from Washington, D.C., where there's a black man with a black wife with 2 black daughters sitting now in the White House. Because there were those who, even though this battle was lost then, there were those who knew they had to fight for the moral fiber that slavery had to end. And even if it took their lives and they would win some battles and lose some battles, they knew they had to fight because the scourge of having that slave block on 1000 Charles Street, or having Mary Washington, who was the mother of George Washington, have slaves, or presidents have slaves, or even if it was though it was in the fabric of our country from the president on down, they knew it was wrong, and they kept fighting and did everything they could. They built underground railroads, and they worked together, and they were abolitionists, and they stood up every single time, said that we will end slavery, and we will bring equality and justice to this country. And many of those folks who were back in 1862 or in 1619, or even in 1908 or 1906, or even 1950, aren't around anymore. They aren't able to see you, but they could see that what they were doing, that it had to be done. And even though they couldn't see it, and they couldn't visualize what it looked like to have a place that no longer had slavery and people selling one another. They knew that was wrong. And because they kept fighting and they would never see it, they stood up and they fought, and in some cases even put their lives on the line to fight for it. Well, I got good news for you. The good news is that we can now see, as the descendants of those freedom fighters, those abolitionists of the day, we can now see that we sit in this room on this old battleground, black and white and brown and yellow, male and female. We sit here in this country. It ain't perfect yet. We still are dealing with things, but we're getting much better than it was when we had slavery a mile away. But now, as they fought for equality, the reality is that they were willing to go to war and fight on the battlefields and put their bodies against the machine to stop the scourge of slavery. But now the reality is this: while they fought for equality, we are now fighting for existence. And our battle is actually so much more than a civil war. You now are a new generation of freedom fighters. Your role at this moment is so much more than them ending the slave block, so much more than them putting on the blue or the gray, so much more trying to end the scourge of that of equality and lynching, so much more being the abolitionists. You now are the new abolitionists for clean energy. That is your calling. That is your task today. That's where you are right now. Now, on some, that may be a little too heavy, as it was for some back then. I can't do this. I can't handle it. But some of you know in your spirits and in your minds that in 2115, 100 front years from now, none of us in this room will be alive. None of us, unless you find some good drugs, and if you do, let me know. We're talking outside the back. We had that conversation. But more than likely in 2115, none of us will be here. None of us. Unless you'll be, I guess it'd be 135 years old. None of us will be here. But what we do on this new battlefield of Fredericksburg, this new battlefield of Fredericksburg, fighting for a new civil war, fighting for a new transition, not from slavery, but from fossil fuels. One as entrenched back then as it is entrenched right now. Willing to put and split the country and fight and hold on to that as long as possible. But we are now on this new battlefield of Fredericksburg right now, getting organized and mobilized and energized to fight for a new generation that we won't see. But if we fight and we can stop coal and we can stop oil and we can stop gas and we can stop all those things that are killing this planet and killing the people on this planet, then that next generation, 2115, will look back and they'll say, well, on that new battlefield of Fredericksburg, there was a group coming together called Virginia Power Shift. I'm not even sure what they was doing back then. But this new group back then 100 years ago called Virginia Power Shift came together from all the colleges all the way around in the state. They came from the north part of the state and the west part of the state and the east part of the state and the south part of the state. And they started organizing and they wouldn't stop. They went forth. They went to the state house. They went to the neighbor's house. They went to the church, the synagogue, and the mosque where they couldn't stop them. They kept fighting and fighting and fighting. They were unified. Yeah, they lost some battles and yeah, they went down, but they never stopped. And this day, on this day, 2115, I can breathe the air right now because of them. I can drink the water right now because of that Virginia Power Shift. And you won't see that. You won't see that. But they will. As I now stand here as a black man, and I can't tell that white man or white woman or black man or black woman who stood up to master, who had their own songs of freedom like Malik Yusef. And when they sang down by the riverside, it wasn't a gospel spiritual, it was a roadmap to freedom. And so when they say troubling in the water, that's just not a song, it's a road, it's a code in the song. And Spaceship Odyssey, it's a code in the song. And what if God was one of us? It's a code in the song leading us to freedom. Now, I know this can be daunting, what I'm talking about right now. I know this might be for some of y'all, you know, I ain't signed up for this. You know, I'm gonna get me some more vegan pizza and be out this joint tomorrow. I'm gonna get me some. Hey, where you going? I see y'all back on campus. Y'all crazy. Ain't no battlefield of Fredericksburg 2115. I'm right now, I'm ready to go get my MTV on. Hit this Xbox real quick. And that will happen. That's real. Some of y'all here, y'all gonna go back and you're gonna be out. And that's cool. We're gonna love you. It's Valentine's Day. See you on campus. Hey. Goodness gracious, you walk fast. He walk fast. Green power, sister. But then some of y'all, I can look at some of y'all's faces, are in this. And that's what scares the fossil fuel industry. You are, because you're the ones who recognized that organized people beat organized money every single time. And there have been some casualties now. You know, we're going to grow our movement. I appreciate the polar bear, like everybody else, from afar. But we grow our movement. And on this battlefield, this new battle of Fredericksburg, 2015, our new civil war for civil existence. On this battlefield, there are already casualties, and they're heavy. There are the 14-year-old girl who has asthma, who's dying, and then there's the mothers and fathers. Right now, we are having this session to get us ready for this battle, who are dying of cancer. And so we're taking heavy casualties in our communities, heavy casualties right now. And the fossil fuel industry is weighing and looking for more. They're even ready to do everything they can to go to war. But we will win, as they won 200 years ago. And now that auction block a mile from here is just a block that we take pictures of, and nobody. How much you want for this one? Look at him. Bend over. Cough. That day no longer exists. I'm free because humanity stood up. But now we're fighting to be free from fossil fuels. And will humanity again stand up to stop this madness we're on now? I said this earlier about Dr. King, and I'll say it again. Dr. King came in 1963, 100 years after that Emancipation Proclamation. And he talked about how we could be free, and we could be black children, white children. And one day, oh Lord, one day we'll be free at last. Free at last. Thank God Almighty, we're free at last. Well, I said earlier, we're no longer just fighting for equality. We're now fighting for existence. And now 51 years later, after Dr. King gave that speech not too far away, we now rise up. And while we don't just say free at last, because we fight on this new battlefield of Fredericksburg, we now say that one day we will be fossil free at last. Fossil free at last. Thank God Almighty, we're fossil free at last. We have a long road ahead. In 2014, we had amazing victories. We had 400,000 in New York City for the People's Climate March. We came together to challenge on the West Coast with coal and stop the coal exports. We stopped fracking in New York State. We organized against FERC to stop or at least slow down the permit process, or at least make it uneasy for the permit process for liquefied natural gas in places all around from Seneca Lake to Cove Point. We came together, and now renewables are now on the rise and coal and gas is on the decline. And we're mobilizing everywhere we go. We've created a divestment campaign that is now on par with the apartheid movement itself. We're challenging boards and endowments all around this country and demanding that they withdraw their funds from fossil fuels. We also stopped the impossible when TransCanada thought it was a done deal with the Keystone XL pipeline. They ran up against this thing called Forward on Climate, and these reckless young folks and old folks, indigenous folks, and the Lakota Nation and the Cowboy Indian Alliance, and we came together and we are beating that back to the point where a president who was all about to ready to sign it is now going to sign a veto, hopefully next week. We created the People's Climate Music and brought artists together like Malik Youssef and Common and Neo and El Varner and Crystal Waters and Raheem Devon to create a new soundtrack for our movement. We're getting ready for Paris in about 10 months to organize and let the world know that the battle of Fredericksburg was not, this time we did not lose, but we won on February 14, 2015. And from that Virginia power shift, the world will recognize that we are something to deal with. And we continue to mobilize and organize. But the only way that we will win this battle in our secret weapon that we have that defeats our enemy, that won against slavery, that won to give us women's rights, that is winning for us to give us gay rights, that is winning for us now to lead on this battle of climate change. And that one thing is love. Our love for ourselves and our planet and your neighbor and your future generations and your children to come and their children to come, our love is going to help us win. If we forget to love, though, we lose. It's game over. The minute we stop loving and the minute we put up our egos and put up our diplomas and our degrees and our privilege, whatever else we want to put up in front of love, we lose. The planet and humanity loses, and then we won't go down as the generation that ended slavery or ended whatever else was there, but we will go down as a generation that failed to win this battle of climate change because we just failed to love simply ourselves and each other. Our love will be so radical for our neighborhoods, we will go into neighborhoods that we've never even been in before. Our love will be so radical that we will do things and work together with folk that we really don't like, but we gonna love them regardless and work together. Our love will be so much that even we ain't got nothing, and we know we gotta study for our last exam and do our paper, we're gonna love this woman so much, we're gonna say, God, just help me get through this one last thing. We're gonna love humanity so much that if these are the bulldozers and you are the people, and we are willing to this will not get to the people because we will stop this. Now imagine now, because you're already sitting, if I'm in the bulldozer and I'm looking down and then you're all sitting down in front of the bulldozer and I look out here at you, I can't drive to you to get to over there to build a pipeline. I can't get over there to put up a new coal-fired power plant. I can't get over there because you are now sitting in the way. Because this is our lunch counter moment for the 21st century. This is our movement. So as I close, I want to tell you a story. I'm a real reverend, by the way. No, for real. People ask me all the time. In hip hop, they be like, you a real reverend? And then folks be like, well, what school you go to? What's John 3:16 say? They give you quizzes, boy, when you hip hop, boy. They give you a quiz, boy. I had to do, I'm like Malik. I'm not like Malik, because Malik is just a blessing. He was in the streets and came out of that. You know, he had a genius outside the academy that you can clearly say is amazing. I'm always at awe when I see Malik Youssef and his genius that's implanted in him. A genius like a Fannie Hamer who can just say things and do things that just are amazing, that come out of him. And we need to have that. Our movement needs to also quickly get out of the academy and get outside the academy. There are some drug dealers, there are some pimps who are going to be some of the most dynamic climate change activists we have ever seen. But we have to get past our bias and allow them and their genius to help us organize, because they can touch folk in our communities that we could never touch in our communities. Get past that, because this is war, and we need everybody on our side. So I'm a real reverend, and I was actually in Southeast. Anybody know Southeast DC? I've been there for Southeast. A little bit of go-go, and there's some go-go going in the house here. And so I was there, and I was asked to do a funeral because I was in the streets. And the streets, one thing about the streets, if you don't know, streets know streets. Don't take them long. They know when you ain't real. Don't come to the streets if you're not real. Don't come with a clipboard, say, hi, I'm from so-and-so. I'm here to save the planet. What planet are you here to save? Your planet. My planet? Yes, your planet. First thing, again, is love. Don't come in a spirit of charity. That's not like that. Come in a spirit of solidarity and love. That spirit that goes, that I'm here because if you die, I die. And if I die, you die. So we in this thing together. Let's build that spirit. So I'm here in Southeast. They know me. I'm there. This is right before was doing the hip hop summit. I performed with Russell Simmons, and they asked me to do a funeral. There's some power plants, as you know, most 60%, I think 60, 70% of African Americans live very close to coal-fired power plants. So another thing too, we can have allies if we just told other folks different ways of telling folk things. Folks, if they knew they lived next to power plants, instead of telling about a polar bear, might be more in line. Nothing wrong with the polar bear. I like polar bears. Make that clear. Everybody say, Red don't like polar bears. Tweet. Hashtag Red don't like polar bears. I don't want you to do that. I like polar bears from afar. But it's about the pollution, and we can reach many more people in our communities if we did it that way. So so when I came up here, the 67% of African Americans live close to coal-fired power plants, which is why the carbon rule that's coming up this year, which Kendall was pushing forth, is so we're all pushing for it, but we're going to sign Kendall's and join wherever the rallies are to do that. That's what we're doing. But in this process, it's a little girl who has asthma. And in the hood, if you've ever been on a bus, you will see that every little kid in the hood has an asthma pump and an inhaler. Just check it out one day. Go to Richmond. Richmond is terrible, air quality. Go to Long Island, where Eric Garner died and was murdered, in that process, and said, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. But go check out Eric Garner. Long Island has the worst air quality. What's also interesting is that not only did Eric Garner have asthma, but then every one of Eric Garner's kids has asthma. So even if he hadn't been choked to death, he was still choking to death. So I can't breathe is real. So I'm here to do this funeral for this young lady. And this mother comes to me Well, the family comes to me and they said this young lady died. I said, well, what happened in the process? They said, well, it was like a lot of kids. This one mother she had a lot of kids, and when you're in the hood, you got some bad kids and some good kids, right? You got some who you just like, I don't know where he is, I don't know where she is, but then you got some good ones who like, they gonna go, that one right there, she going to UVA, and that one right there, she going to Roanoke. And that one right there, going to Mary Washington. That's the good one. Other ones, that right there, well, I just got to get, a little bit of bail money for that one. It's hood. So this one was the good one. In other words, when mama had to go to work, she was 14. Mama had to go to work, she would do the babysitting, she would do the cleaning, vacuuming, dishwashing, everything. Coming from school, getting straight A's. Taking care. Older brother hanging out, come on, man, help clean his room, help him with his homework. That's what I'm talking about. You get the picture? Good. So the one thing, though, because again, African Americans live so close to these coal-fired power plants in the hood, because they put them right there because they think it's a path of least resistance. So she's there, and she has asthma. But her mother can't afford health insurance. So her mother then comes forward and has to make a decision, literally playing Russian roulette. Do I get this baby this inhaler, or can I make it to my next paycheck? Now, I've already caught her once or twice choking on the living room floor. And she didn't have that. We just made it. But I got to feed all my other kids, and I got this, and I got that. I'm in the hood, y'all. It's about good baby. This the one gonna go to UVA. This the one gonna go to Women Mary. This little baby here gonna make it. Because she's intelligent. She's in the honors program in the hood school. And she's working hard, and she helps me with all my babies. I'm out doing the second shift. Ready to go to the third shift. She's the one cooking the food and putting other babies to sleep. This little 14-year-old girl. So the mother plays Russian roulette with this because she has this inhaler, and these pollution and these companies don't care because they just flood the community with this pollution, and it's coming all throughout. And so the mother plays Russian roulette, and so she plays Russian roulette, and then one day she loses, and she comes home and she finds this girl in the middle of the living room floor, and she had died because she could not breathe, y'all. And she died simply because there are these companies and fossil fuels who won't transition. And so she's breathing in this dust and this filth. And so instead of that, she dies, this one. And so they asked me to do the funeral. So while I'm doing the funeral, they put her casket right there. And the entire time when I'm doing the funeral, this mama is screaming at the top of her lungs, and then she tries to get inside the casket with her baby. And then the cousins would pull her away, and she would break loose, and then literally come back to the casket and say, it should be me, and try to get into the casket. Literally, the casket is almost falling over with this baby inside. Because what? What would cause that much loss? Because you want profits? You want money? You want to ride around in your BMW and go and trade your crude oil and your gas and your oil, and these babies are dying? Because you can pay the politicians off and put that company and that thing in their hood? That's what it's about? That's where we're at? Where the caskets get knocked over and mothers try to climb into the casket of their dead babies? That is not where we're at. Because right now, I can't bring that little girl back, but I can talk to you. And so the next time when you're out in the street and you're fighting to change policy, you won't give up. For all those that those companies have laid in the ground, you won't give up. Because you right now are living and can stand up for those who are dead. You are the future. And if not you, then if not you, and if not you, then who will stand up for those who have lost their lives? You are the future. You are the now. You are the ones who will bring justice for that girl and the other girls and the other boys who have lost their lives to these rogue corporations. You are it. You are it. You are it. Power to the people. 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 We can't lose, y'all, and we won't lose. The people united will never be defeated. Virginia Power Shift, let's go get them.
Where I come from, that's called church. Church. Give for Reverend Lennox Yearwood one more again, y'all. I can sit down. One thing Reverend Yearwood didn't mention, he said that, he's a real reverend. He was a chaplain for the Air Force, and he had to speak one day. He's in the Air Force, If you don't know what the Air Force is, it's not like the shoes that you wear. It's actually a branch of the United States military. And he gave a speech, and the title of it is, "Who Would Jesus Bomb?" And the military, they don't really like when you say stuff like that. They like to keep Jesus and bombing separately. They like the Jesus part, they like the bombing part, but not together. Problematic. Because you have to answer that question. And it probably would be, if you know about the historical Christos or Yahshua or whatever the name would be called, it probably would be like nobody. And then that mess up all their money and stuff. So they gotta make the bomb, then use them. So it messed up. Jesus messed them all up with that. I want to do a poem for y'all, but I wanted to say this part to you, that I want to kind of demystify just a little bit what it is that you're involved in, because it can be an arduous task to get up every day and be this person. Get up every day. And when you go back to home and stuff like that, to have your mama or your auntie or uncle do the small parts, recycle, which starts a conversation, or compost, which starts a conversation. Reducing the carbon footprint, which starts a conversation, which is the larger scale, what the corporations are doing. So I'm gonna give you a little trick to use, so that the days when you broke up with somebody you in love with, or they don't call back, or you seen them with somebody else, or you see something on Instagram you don't like, or they Facebook somebody, they start following their ex on Twitter, and you get, you feel some type of way about it. And you don't go to the rally tonight because, gosh darn it, I'm upset. I don't feel good. So I drink too much. Or I took a painkiller and I don't want to get up, and leave me alone about that stuff today. Because when we here and everybody's together, we feel super powerful. It's human nature. We around the fire. Reverend Lennox Yearwood is fire, and humans like to gather around heat. We like to coalesce in groups around hot. We like to be in great numbers. That means safety. Before we removed ourselves from the food chain, it removed us from predation to be in large numbers. Because I can look out for you, you can look out for me. The wolves ain't gonna attack a group of people like this. But when you by yourself, and you in your dorm or your apartment or you back home, and you feel like the odd person because you committed to go to a rally on a Friday night when you was feeling good here, but 2 weeks from now, you don't feel the same. Or it rain, or it snow, or it get cold, or your car don't start. Or the friend that was supposed to pick you up don't pick you up. Let me give you a little trick to get through those bad parts, which is definitely gonna come. Life is full of bad parts. Full. You've heard all these idioms and colloquialisms. Take the bitter with the sweet. Ups and downs. Good and bad. Sunny and rain and all that. But none of that really matter. You have to decide and lean on one thing, the strength of your conviction. Not my conviction. I'm dedicated. Rev dedicated. Your next door neighbor, your roommate dedicated. The strength of your conviction. That translates to a little thing called integrity. You have to develop this. You have to practice it. You have to feed it. There's a Native American saying that says, in the heart of every human lives two wolves. Two mother wolves live in every person's heart. And as you grow, they grow. And they give birth to other wolves. One is the negative. I doubt myself. I don't like myself. I don't look that good. They look bad to me. I don't have this. I don't let nobody like me. Why they doing that? Why? Who they think they is anyway? I don't know why everybody like them. That wolf. There's the good wolf. Oh, you look nice today. How's everything going? Would you like some of this? Would you like a piece? Can I share this with you? What can I do? Do you need help? And the question is always going to be, which one wins the territory of your heart? Which one wins the territory of your heart? Does anybody know the answer to that? The one you feed the most. So I'm going to do this poem. This is off the album Home that I hope y'all start to download at some point in your existence. 1,000 years. So it's on the album. I'm going to do it in like poetry form, how I first wrote it. Because I'm a poet. I produce music and write songs and stuff too. But my core, I do poetry. Like my friends say, I guess that's what made me turn gay, I guess. And it's crazy that we don't have, we live in a different world now. That was like in like the 90s when anything that wasn't tough was gay. Like, oh, gay. And now we understand that there's some tough gay dudes. There's some tough One of my closest allies is a gay dude, and I would not want nobody to say nothing mean to him. Not because there's any problem with him, it's for their own health and safety reasons. When he say, hey, leave me alone, that's not like a request, that's a warning. Hey, get up off me. That's not saying, oh, please spare me. That's saying, hey, do your family a favor. So this poem is called Spaceship Odyssey, and it's on the album, but it's in music form with hooks and stuff, and music and beats and stuff. So this is the poem. Hey mama, I'm going fast. 0 emissions in a Tesla blowing gas. Catch a glimpse of the future on that high-speed chase. Strawberry fields is how my weed tastes. I'm steady thugging, but these trees need a hugging, and this is an issue that I must embrace. I got an oven full of edibles, and I'm feeling incredible. That's how you know that this truth is indelible. Please don't shoot. Put your right hand up. Please don't shoot. Put your left hand up. And if you about that action, let's stand up. I know we under that gun, and me without a pistol. But we headed for that sun with no dilithium crystals and no photon torpedoes and or missiles. I'm finna get it popping like ozone, player. But y'all keep popping holes in the ozone layer. Our shields are down, so our fields are brown. Blind to the facts, nigga, feel around. Real nigga like me steal the crown so I can heal the ground. I'm the king of the world. My message would reach more people if I broke bad and sold it in a meth jar. Either harness solar power or turn the sun into a Death Star. And I hope that ass can swim, because the whole Pacific Rim finna be underwater. Being that our icebergs are slim as the author, I'm riding in my spaceship. They try to silence the science of global warming. That's way too cold. Corporations poison the water, sell it back to you. That's their blue gold. See, I'm going to keep chiming in on this climate issue until it starts to ring a few bells in a few ears. Being that me and my team been had a nice buzz like a few beers. You might get it in a few years, once you've shared a few tears of quality of life experience. See, I only have 2 gears. One is no brakes and the other is all accelerator. See, I got hella haters because I keep exposing the fact that they keep building elevators or escalators to get up off this third rock. I'm on nation business, Joe, and I got preferred stock. Yeah, you might be getting neck in your cars, but we like 30 seconds from Mars. And it's a slightly smaller planet, so up there we might be giants. I told my daughter that the earth was hurting, and she started crying. Said that the atmosphere was heating up, and she imagined dragons. But she just barely school age. She's just barely school age. Welcome to the new age. I just spoke to Rev, and this is what he said, that this is our watershed. So stop pouring it over your head, or we can end up dead. Or your next challenge won't be purchasing gas. It will be buying tap water by the gallon. Or it will be buying tap water by the gallon. True facts. Space Odyssey. 2 stacks. Thank y'all so much, man.
Thank y'all.
Yeah. Let's keep that applause going a little longer for Hip Hop Caucus. We're having Malik. So Rev's told us we cannot lose. You already know what's coming. Let's make this louder than ever, though, all right? Let's go. I believe. I believe that. I believe that we. I believe that we will. I believe that we will win. 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 Let's go. You want to talk about something?